Great, thank you. Mr. Krasner is not joining us tonight. I think he is out of town. We do have two planning commissioners that were not here last meeting when we met our new planning director, Matt Matuzek. So I think you all have introduced yourself, but just want to give you another warm welcome, Matt. I'm looking forward to working with you. Hope you've been settling in over these last few weeks. Great. Okay, so I think the next item on our agenda is adoption of the agenda. If there are no changes, can I have a move to adopt?
Madam Chair, I move that we adopt the agenda.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. All right, no speaker series tonight. Mr. Trainer, do we have any petitions?
Yes, Madam Chair, we did have one petition from Jean Gresco of 120 North Fairfax Street, who wrote to the commission with some concerns about the affordable living policy. And that's it.
Okay, was that forwarded to us? I don't think I received
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
Did Mr. Gresco write today?
Yeah, so these comments came in, I believe, yesterday, late yesterday.
Okay,
They were regarding some previously submitted comments that
Didn't make it.
unfortunately didn't, make it to publication. So he was following up on those.
okay, I see. Yeah, I haven't looked at this since late yesterday, or our agenda, or the attachments online since late yesterday, so we'll take a look at that. Thank you. Any other, no in-person petitions, I take it, tonight?
That's
Nope.
correct.
Okay, so that can bring us to our action items. Did everybody have a chance to take a look at the minutes from our July 16th meeting? Any changes? Mr. Duncan?
So Jack and I had an exchange. There's something at the top of the second page that is a little garbled, that he's going to explain what it really needs to say, or maybe he's already put it in there.
Was there a change that y'all discussed?
The motion regarding subdivision plat, but the language underneath it is the affordable living policy motion itself, so.
Oh, I see,
I don't know-
yeah.
I don't know, what-
Yes.
something in the first paragraph needs to change to say what the rest of it reflects.
Right. You flagged this, Mr. Duncan, to me. Haven't made the change yet because I was waiting for the meeting to
Yeah.
capture that. But yeah, there was a typo in the action language here on line 37 to 38, where Mr. Duncan made a motion to approve and recommend council approve the affordable living policy. But the language of the minutes was regarding the preliminary subdivision plat. So we can make that change.
Okay, I see. And then Mr. Stevens made the motion to approve this is not related to the second item, the Broad and Washington item. I was wondering if they got mixed up. It's just that the language describing the motion is wrong.
That's right. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, the motion itself should be correct.
Okay,
It was just the language describing the motion ahead of time.
and the vote was 5-0, right? That
Correct.
Election. Okay, all right, thank you.
So with that revision, I would move to adopt the meeting minutes.
Okay, is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Not a change to the minutes, but one of the comments I asked to look into was the tear down rebuilt statistic that was used. Did you ever come to closure on that statistic?
I'm sorry, Mr. Crimmins, I'll follow up with the staff on that. I haven't heard back personally on that, but I can check with the
Okay,
our housing folks.
no issue. Just wanted to know how it came out. Thanks.
Jack, I just need to abstain from that vote. Thank you.
Noted, thank you.
Okay, all right, so I think that brings us to our work session tonight, which is a look at the cottage housing ordinance. Mr. Matuzek, did you want to introduce us?
Yeah.
So this is in response to last month's meeting where I think there was interest from the commission to provide another update by staff on kind of where things stand. We've had a chance to meet with other staff that were involved in that last update, which I believe was in spring of this year, where I think we were presenting some information on kind of the last several years' worth of that effort. With Jack's help, we've been able to pull some minor additional information that may not have been included in that last assessment, which I think helps frame the totality of staff's review and recommendations on the topic. But beyond that, as you'll see in Jack's presentation, we're kind of just open to have a conversation and really waiting for the city council to dictate and express any kind of prioritization of where that item might fit within the broader work plan for next year. So with that, I'll hand it over to Jack.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Matusik. So, yes, as Mr. Matusik said, we, the planning staff kind of brushed up some of the materials that was presented to the Planning Commission during its annual advance earlier this spring. One of those was this presentation. Might look familiar. So this is going to be, my presentation is just going to be running through these slides again. We'll talk about the, just kind of quickly what the cottage housing ordinance was, what got adopted, and what the last staff recommendations were for an update, I think, as a starting point for discussion. We also dug up some of the, some not new data, but maybe newer to the commission data that wasn't presented previously on the number of eligible parcels under both the current ordinance and the proposed update that staff had gathered in 2020. So again, there's no new information, there's no new recommendation. This is purely for conversation at the request of the Planning Commission. So without further ado, again, tonight's discussion is on the cottage housing ordinance. Planning Commission reviewed this at its advance on March 26th, and the annual report with the Planning Commission's recommendations to City Council for its 2025 calendar year were presented to Council in April. Perhaps the chair, after the presentation, could, if there was any discussion, if you recall on the cottage ordinance, that might be something to share too, as we get going with the discussion. So the cottage housing ordinance was adopted by council in February 2017. The current eligibility is only for R1A parcels through the SE or special exception procedure. And the cottage housing ordinance allows for the grouping of small single dwelling units clustered around a common area, developed with a coherent plan for the entire site. So it's kind of a smaller master planned site. And the zoning regulations that were included in the approved ordinance included a minimum lot size of 45,000 square feet. I think that's equivalent to about, so it's several R1A parcels. Four, yeah, thank you. I was trying to do that math really quick in my head, so 3 or 4. So the equivalent of 4 R1A parcels together. The form could be detached or semi-detached, in a maximum gross floor area of 1,000 square feet on the first floor, maximum height of 1.5 stories or 25 feet. And the buildings would have to be oriented towards that common area or the other units, so sort of inward facing. And then sort of a unique element to it was the shared community building, so like a sort of clubhouse or common gathering area. And on the right here is a source from, or a floor plan of one of the railroad cottages that actually got built in town. It was a 2-bed, 2.5 bath, just under 1,500 square feet. And so an important part of the cottage ordinance that was approved was a provision requiring a kind of follow-up analysis by the city 3 years after that 2017 approval. So in 2020, staff had done a lot of work to do an analysis on the railroad cottages and make some recommendations for kind of follow-up action, which we'll get into next. I think the Planning Commission actually had a work session on it.
We did.
Thank you. And then the city council either was going to have a work session or the pandemic happened right before. Maybe
Had
Mr. Stevens
one, but
remembers.
then they
It was
didn't,
like February 2020.
yeah, they just had a work session, so they didn't get to an actual vote or
Okay.
any formal action.
So there were 2 work sessions, yeah, and that's where the trail goes cold. So we picked up, the materials and the staff reports that were put together for those meetings, and those were included as attachments to this presentation and our staff report. So essentially, that 3-year follow-up analysis never happened. But the Planning Commission did include that, returning to that idea in its annual report and recommendation to City Council to do. So some other, okay, so some of those staff recommendations at the time, again in 2020, included removing the 55-year age restriction that was included and is still on the books for the cottage ordinance. Staff also recommended amending the provision that the development has to be located within 500 feet of a revitalization area, of which there are 2 in the city, and to require that the location be within 1/4 of a mile or up to 1,320 feet. On the next slide, you'll see a map of these boundaries. So expanding that buffer area outside of the revitalization zones. Staff also recommended considering its use in the R1B district and amending the minimum lot size from 45,000 square feet to 33,750 square feet, which I believe is the equivalent of 3 R1A parcels, down from 4. I think that's a typo because the railroad cottages were probably,
About 20 years off.
yeah, I think the railroad cottages were approved in 2017, probably shortly after the ordinance was adopted. I'm not sure where the 97 came from. But yeah, so the railroad cottages that got built included 10 units. And were each approximately 1,500 square feet in size. Included that common area that's right off the WNOD trail over on Railroad Avenue. And again, has that age restriction of the residents have to be at least 55 years or older. I guess another point of note is that 2 other cottage developments were discussed at some point with the city, but for one reason or another couldn't make it work. So I think helped inform staff's recommendations in 2020, including expanding that buffer area from 500 feet from a revitalization area to 1/4 mile. So next couple slides collect the potential properties affected or the eligible individual properties. So I think the original ordinance anticipated that there would be consolidation of several parcels required. There isn't a lot of individual properties in the city then and now that met the adopting criteria. So absent consolidation, this chart kind of summarizes several scenarios showing how many individual parcels would become eligible. So this contemplates both what was adopted and what staff was recommending at the time in terms of adjusting that minimum lot area and the distance from a revitalization area. It's a little, this chart looks really straightforward, but we took it from a previous staff report and tried to make it a little more digestible. We kind of had a hard time looking at it and just kind of making sense of it. But of the parcels today that are 45,000 square feet or larger, only 2 are within 500 feet of a revitalization area, and they're both privately owned parcels. And then, yep. I believe they have different owners. We can confirm that because we didn't include the addresses here. We just consolidated the information. But we can double check, but I'm pretty sure each parcel has different ownership except for the public parks, obviously, which are all owned by the city.
There are 2 sites. Each site is owned by one person, or each site owned by multiple.
Oh, I see, like a trust or something.
Or like the area, the revitalization is owned by multiple. Like it's,
We can double check, yeah. And then, so of parcels that are at least 45,000 square feet and basically between that 500-foot buffer and the quarter mile, there's 7 additional parcels, so not 7 so that'd be 9 total. We actually got these flipped around. So 7 additional parcels would become eligible, again, that are at least 45,000 square feet and between 500 feet and a quarter mile from a revitalization area. But of those 7 additional parcels, 3 are historic properties and 4 are private. Again, these were the kind of breakpoints that staff included at the time. I don't think there was anything prohibiting, historic properties from participating in the cottage ordinance, but there are certainly additional hurdles
Difficult.
to get there. Yeah. So really, the privately owned individual properties would be the most redevelopment ready, I suppose. So that's the first row. The bottom row shows that minimum lot size adjustment. So starting at 33,750 square feet, but less than the current minimum lot size of, so just under 45,000 square feet. So today, if you didn't change the required distance from a revitalization area, but you did adjust the minimum lot size, that would introduce 3 new properties, 1 being historic and 2 being public parks. And if both adjustments were made, if the lot size, the minimum lot size came down and the distance opened up, then that would draw 7 additional sites.
So just to clarify, you're going from under the current, within 500 square feet and lot size of 45,000, you go to going to 13 20s feet in the distance and 33,000, you're going from 2 to 7, did I, or from 2 to 7, or is it 2 plus 7 to total additional?
It would be 2 plus 7, so these are additional additional parcels that would become eligible.
So those two changes would go, we would go from 2 sites that are eligible to 9 sites.
To 14, I believe. So these are different, yeah, so you would have 7 additional properties added that are at least 45,000 square feet, and then below 45,000 square feet, but at least 33,750, that would be an additional 7.
And they're not the same properties, Jack?
That's correct. We can double check this breakdown, the 3 historic and 4 private, but yeah, I do remember looking at the individual address chart, and so it'd be 14 additional properties from the current 2.
And I think the map that follows, I think, almost more clearly identifies that total number and then also gives you a sense of where they are, how many are, you know, adjacent to each other.
Right, and so, yeah, I think the light purple is the private non-historic. Dark purple is historic, privately owned historic properties, and greens are parks. The red boundary are the revitalization areas. And again, we've got 2, one spanning Broad Street up into the west end, and then another kind of absorbing the South Washington and, well, the entire Washington Street kind of corridor. So those are the 2 boundaries. The 500 square feet distance from a revitalization area is the black boundary. So you can see that there's very few properties within the black. But then the blue is the quarter-mile distance from the revitalization area, and that's where the majority of the properties identified are. And then the yellow shaded properties are all R1A districts. So that covers the overview. As a reminder, you know, council sets their work plan every year. Generally, that happens in, you know, the first couple months of the year. So city council will be discussing and having their retreat to discuss their work plan for calendar year 2026 in January. So we just included that there to keep in mind. So that, you know, that I think concludes my presentation, and you know, Mr. Matusik and I are here to answer any questions. There's not much, again, new information, but we're here to answer any questions that we can. So,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for doing the extra work to kind of unearth all of this past information and find some new information. So how do we want to begin? Do you want to start, Mr. Stevens? Do we
Sure.
want to talk about the
Yeah,
sort of
Happy to
just general thoughts?
share some comments, so thanks for your research and presentation. Yeah, my interest in this was prompted about a year ago when I was talking with Jim Snyder, and we were just kind of kicking around what are things that the Planning Commission could be doing, and without missing a beat, he came back and said, well, you ought to complete the work on cottage housing. I said, okay, I get it. So, you know, that's the interest, and I think we've kind of proven over the last 5 years since, you know, this was implemented, that you can do a cottage housing project, and a lot of the things that, you know, some folks might have feared kind of didn't happen, and in fact, we had a lot of positive things that maybe weren't anticipated over and above. You know, I'm just thinking going through COVID, which was a real problem as far as people socializing and so forth. The people that I talked to over at the railroad cottages were just thrilled that they had the layout that they did during COVID, and I said it really made a big difference in terms of them kind of relying on each other, So, you know, again, that wasn't really anticipated in the, when the ordinance was first passed. Seems like, you know, regardless of whatever individual views we might have on some of the different topics, you know, like the distance from the commercial areas and so forth, that the first step seems to be that we've got to get some kind of an agreement from council to kind of set this on their agenda and then kind of staff it out to all the boards and commissions and so forth. So I'm just wondering if you had any thoughts on what that is? You know, what is that process? I mean, do we send them maybe a resolution saying we think it's a good idea to take the next steps to try to update the ordinance pending your approval and indication, you know? Just wondering if you had any thoughts on what we could do to kind of help move the process along.
So I think maybe a healthy timing for that would be later this year and prior to kind of that January timeframe where the council generally discusses the priorities for next year, the work plan. So presuming conversations would likely happen prior to that meeting, signaling if there are some low-hanging fruit that perhaps may not be as intensive as a comp plan update or something else. I think that might be healthy for consideration. Several things may still occur between now and then, but given the length of staff analysis that has already happened, we really consider the next step as kind of being the public engagement side of the equation.
Right.
Hearing from other stakeholders, and then maybe evolving staff's analysis further before we can really draft more current recommendations. But clearly, as you can see in the presentation, a lot of work already went into it. You know, we're dealing with a fairly reasonable number of sites if you exclude the historic or even park sites.
Right.
So it's not I think, a significant impact, given the scale of the changes. And it's an update to an existing policy, as you mentioned,
Right.
as a proof of concept that everybody has kind of experienced now. So we're hopefully more comfortable with it.
Right.
But where does that stand against and compare against other priorities? That's an open question. Particularly since staff is already kind of queuing up and getting ready to look at the land use component. That's going to be a pretty big lift. And we're going to be pretty busy this fall with the facilities chapter and some other adjustments to the zoning ordinance.
So you're kind of raising a resource issue in addition to.
Depending how other people consider priorities for next year, and given that a lot of what we do, you know, takes several months, if not, you know, a year to complete, so.
Would there still be any value even acknowledging that, you know, as far as where this might fall in the queue, may not be that high, just for all the reasons that you mentioned, that it nonetheless, that it would be helpful for the planning commission to express its interest in this to council so that they have that input as they consider what they want, you know, their new list of priorities to be.
Particularly since I think the last time they've heard from you was beginning of the year or in the first quarter?
For them since the salary letter.
Right.
That's the only thing we've sent, really.
So because of that delay, I guess, and where their upcoming conversations will be, I think a letter might be healthy just to express that. And maybe in the letter, if there are other priorities you've been discussing or have noticed, that could be a good opportunity to highlight those.
I'm happy to drop something, or
Sure.
would
No,
you
I
like to
think
work
that-
with me on it, Mr.
I'm
Stevens?
happy
If
to
you
work
could
with
go
you
ahead.
on it, but yeah, I think, I was kind of hoping that tonight from discussion from the group that we would find enough of a consensus, you know, to kind of move forward with that step. You may, I don't know if you want to hear from other folks on other thoughts or,
Yeah, I mean, I think the letter could, you know, just say we'd like to take another look at this for all the reasons that you stated. We've already done a lot of staff work. It would be sort of an iterative process. But as far as like how people feel about the specific recommendations, you know, I don't know that we need to like say we
revisit.
feel
Yeah.
X, Y, or Z on those at this point in the process. I think there's a bigger discussion. We could have some of that discussion tonight
Yeah.
if we want to. What what does everybody else feel like? What other questions do people have? How are you feeling about this sort of resurfacing the cottage housing topic for council? Any other thoughts?
I'm certainly on board. I think the idea of putting it from record there with a letter is a great idea.
Doug, anything from you? You were not involved.
I don't have, like, any antipathy
Do you have your mic on?
I don't have any antipathy towards creating a letter or having a conversation. I think the thing I don't understand is if there is and I'm context for you. I'm relatively new to the planning commission, so I know works out very nicely. We can ask all the new guy questions together. The change, like, this seems the real opportunity is to change in the distance. Change in the distance of the revitalization zones being the opportunity in which we can create that. Does that have to go, you said making like low-hanging fruit or the concept of changing something related to a comp plan or like something very, like, is changing, I guess my question is, if writing a letter or indicating our desire to revisit this mean opening up a giant conversation, or is the concept of changing the boundaries or the distance relatively, is that the low-hanging fruit? I don't think I quite understand that.
I think like we would be signaling to council that there's support from the planning commission and sort of like taking another look at cottage housing, and we're asking council to sort of direct staff to then put the time in to like facilitate a bigger discussion that like PC and council, because staff can't really do any like substantive work on these things until they're directed
So
by city council.
This
to do that.
conversation is more of a prioritization conversation. This is not like directly related to any changes that would be necessary in order to.
That would be the cart before the horse, I think.
That makes sense, okay.
But I think in the context of the term low-hanging fruit, it's really, we are not at the stage where we are simply questioning whether or not we should be revisiting the policy, or if there are certain directions we should consider to ensure more sites are eligible as a way of us encouraging this form of development to occur in other areas of the city. That part, I think, and some of those initial considerations have been identified, and I think we're in general agreement. The specifics of, is it a quarter of a mile? Is it a half? Is it, that now seeing how many sites would be eligible with at least one scenario in front of us. So I think there's a lot of legwork that has already happened, which means that we're really at the stage of kind of inviting others to participate, weigh in, give us feedback. And I think adopting something at this stage is a little bit easier of a lift than starting from scratch where none of this work has actually happened. So, and I think also building up on the briefings that have happened to date with this group, with city council, I wasn't there, but I don't think I've seen any record where there was a clear, please stop, we'll work on this. We are not supportive of any further changes. So I think there was generally a sign of encouragement that some change might be worth considering. The degree to which that has to happen, and then what the timing of it, particularly when there are no active applications waiting for the change, that's kind of the gray area we're trying to explore.
Okay, because I think what I hear you saying is that there's a difference between saying, city council, we think that we should reprioritize staff looking at this, which really is the staff work to communicate to possible stakeholders or the people who would be either developers or residents affected by a change to a particular policy, which has been fairly mapped out. Like, we have some options, we have some things we're looking at, as opposed to starting from scratch. If we said, and please, nobody who's listening to this, like, I'm not saying this thing, but like, return all R1As to be eligible for duplexes or something like that, right? Like, that's a much starting at the beginning type of conversation, even though that might necessarily result in more of what we're trying to get to. So I think that answers like the question I had, which is, we're not really, it would not be a city council, we think staff should look at this more. We should carry out seeing if, what the feedback would be about moving this forward with the work that's already, with the staff work that's already been done. Am I understanding that the way you guys are thinking about it?
I guess I can look at, the previous staff work and where things were back at the beginning of 2020 as a starting point. And I guess in my own mind, I wait and see how the letter materializes that we talked about earlier, but it would be good to say, hey, there may be other things too, but that this is a good, well-researched starting point. We've got, the experience of the railroad cottages. And so, it's less of a kind of trying to plow new ground and really just kind of picking up on something that we had previously started. So if you're looking for ways to make progress in the housing front, and we just passed, the city just passed the affordable living policy, here's one that's already had a lot of work on it.
And has already produced a really lovely
Yeah.
example. Yeah, the thing I like about it is just like it's a really interesting, different housing typology that we don't have a lot of in the city. So we have one, right?
I guess my question would be, like, given a magic wand, like, what kind of stuff would we think that the staff would be able to do if we operated this as a starting point as opposed to, I guess I'm confused by the concept of starting point as opposed to, like, is there more work done to the plan or taking the next steps from taking the plan to being communicated to?
Well, I mean, it's a good question in the sense of process. That's kind of where I was going a little bit earlier. It's not real clear. I mean, council had a process, I suppose, with T-zone and kind of what happened there. Not everybody liked it. So, that's something that I guess they would have to contemplate as to, given that we have what we have as far as previous staff work on cottage housing, do we just start there and put that out for comment, or would council want to open this up more? I'm not sure. I think that's really their call.
I think my concern with that is, like, in terms of the prioritization, I know you said I should go first, sorry, I just keep talking.
It's a work session, right?
Yeah. So I think the thing is, like, in terms of prioritization, like, if there are no current developers who are, at least that's what I thought I heard you say, there's no developers who are looking, like, if we open this up, we have somebody ready to go, or interested, right, like, not necessarily ready to go, is this the best use of the like, if we have limited capacity from staff, limited capacity from city council, it's tough to say in a vacuum, right? Like, I'm trying to think of, like, all the other stuff we're doing. I live next to the railroad apartments. We go scootering and biking past them all the time. Like, it is a very convenient, like, no problems conceptually. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a thing we should do. But in a fixed resource environment, which is likely only to get worse over the next year or two.
What's the opportunity cost? Is
That's
what
really
you're
what
asking.
that's
Yeah.
really what I'm thinking. And I don't know the
I
answer.
think this
to
is easier than anything else that we would try to do. That's my interim, and we may have a bigger, and this is what my question is, like, if we are going to be tackling the land use chapter next year, like, how does this fit into that? Because it's very related.
As
And
opposed
so-
to, let's say, missing middle, going after changing
Look,
all of
I
the.
already told people
arson.
not to get, not to worry about that yet. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, that leads into the comment that I was going to make, which is, I really like this initiative. I think we have to be, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but we have to be a little bit holistic about land use. And I know that the staff has committed to doing a scoping study of the different options for land use, and one of them, I'm sure, will be the introduction of, cottage housing or exploring cottage housing. But there's a lot of other potential housing-related, land use-related initiatives that we could be taking.
Right.
And I don't have any problem, 2 years ago, we pulled out T-zones, and we spent a year on that. A year ago, we pulled out accessory dwellings, and we spent a year on that. And we potentially could spend another year on cottage housing, and that's great. But at some point in time, we need to look a little bit more holistically at land use in the city and saying, there's a whole range of options that you know, I know you guys have committed to doing a scoping study as part of your land use chapter, and I think that's great, but we have to have that broader conversation at some point in time to say, what do we want our neighborhoods to look like? Do we want tax abatements to preserve older housing? Do we want duplexes and triplexes? Do we want more flexibility with the permitting process? You know, do we want all that to allow triplexes and duplexes by right? Those are all, you know, we have to sort of look more holistically of saying, what do we want our neighborhoods to look like? And at some point, we need to get to that. We can pull this out and say, this is low-hanging fruit, and we don't need to sort of have a grand vision. But at some point in time, we do need to have a grand vision of what we as a community are willing to accept in our neighborhoods, you know. So I'm fully supportive of this, but this is just one more drumbeat that's not looking holistically at what our neighborhoods should look like, you know.
May not achieve that, but given that we have what's in the stable already on cottage housing, I'm wondering if it could be looked at as a higher probability of success in making some progress.
Yeah, and I think that's great, and I think that's what we need to do. We need to, there's nothing wrong with, we can't stop all progress until we have some holistic vision of what our neighborhood should look like. So we move forward, but at some point in time, you know, and I think it's great that the planning division has sort of committed to this scoping study of what our our housing options should look like, our land use options should look like. But I'm anxious to see what the broader look at our neighborhoods, what our vision for those neighborhoods should be.
And just to kind of contextualize and maybe adjust expectations, part of what you'll see whenever we get to it on the comp plan update, I think will contextualize where the comp plan lives and relates to all the earlier work that I think gets to part of what you were just mentioning about the vision for each neighborhood as it's expressed in these small area plans. Because there is a level of detail that I think changes depending on the plan that you're looking at. And I think from our perspective, as early as we are in the scoping and just thinking about what that process will look like, the biggest priority is to ensure that that older land use chapter speaks to and is consistent with the small area plans. And making sure that if we are considering any updates, if there's newer thinking, newer, envisioning, that it doesn't conflict with all the work that went into and all the community engagement that's reflected in the small area plans. So I think they speak to a much more granular vision for different parts of the city. How does the comp plan element and its land use chapter capture all of that cohesively, but then also speak to some of these new housing forms? And the last thing I wanted to mention is, as you look at kind of the hierarchy of the comp plan element, the small area plans, what this is getting to is actually an even deeper level where we're impacting zoning ordinance. And part of the challenge, as we've seen it with some other applications that have almost made it to you this year, is that things may say something in the comp plan, but if they don't say something in the zoning ordinance or the zoning district, we have a big problem, or at least the applicants there. So I think looking at opportunities where we have inconsistencies, conflicting messaging, deviations from vision, that's, I think, going to be a huge lift for that land use chapter as we look at all the work we have done in the last decade or so, and then how do we have that plan reflect all that?
Yeah, and I do think, obviously, that comp plan or land use needs to be somehow synchronized with zoning ordinances, and I get that, but I'm not sure how you would do land use without sort of making sure it's fully aligned with any updates to zoning ordinances. If, and I hate to use the Arlington example, if we decide to use allow triplexes, on single lots, there's a zoning implication, right? It's both a land use and a zoning implication.
Yeah, and my philosophy, and I don't think I'm alone in this, is you want to start with the vision, you want to have it reflected in kind of outcome-based expectations for the community, for different stakeholders. Zoning is more of an implementation mechanism of how you get there. So to me, zoning can sometimes happen concurrently with that vision process, or it can happen as a separate follow-up process to that as you implement the vision. Sometimes either can take months, if not years, to finish, and sometimes you can be more efficient with your time and doing them at the same time. But that is a very close relationship we can look at.
Well, so I didn't want to derail that discussion, but and because I do think this is maybe not low-hanging fruit, but lower-hanging fruit than some of the other ideas that are out there, and we should just move forward with it. But at some point, we just need to also look at the big picture.
Yeah, I hope we will do that as part of the land use chapter.
And given that we don't have site plans anymore, we'll have more time to help
Yeah.
out.
Got nothing else to do.
Any thoughts from you, Sherry?
Sure. Thank you. I am in full support of the Railroad Cottage ordinance itself. I think it's been proven to be very successful. I think the intent originally was very clearly defined on what the intention was. It was really for kind of odd-shaped lots that really didn't, they were more of a challenge to kind of plan for a more typical kind of development. And it also was for a certain age group to make life easy to stay in the city without having all the extra financial and physical burden, right? So those original intentions are very clear and clean in the Railroad Cottage. And I think that that is a shining example of what it can and should be. And it was also meant to be like kind of a nicer quality of construction too.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I think in looking at the ordinance, I'm fine with bringing it up to city council and let them make the determination over like resources versus reward. That's really something that they should be able to take a look at and decide, like, maybe not this time around, but maybe next year, right? But I also think that there could be, in some of those revisions, we need to be very clear about what the intention is. And I think it goes back to what our director was saying, was we really need that public input component. Like what, and then it comes back to the land use chapter and that overarching vision. So I don't know if it's really a low-hanging fruit if we don't have a very clearly defined intention, if we're thinking about modifying or revising that ordinance. Only because I feel like some of the things that are being proposed could have some unintended consequences, like consolidation of a lot of lots and changing, and the cottage housing, the way that it's oriented towards a central common place. So it's really turning its back on the rest of the neighborhood. So in locations where you have these odd-shaped parcels, that makes sense. But when you start to get more into the urban fabric of a lot of those neighborhoods, that could be an unintended consequence. So I do think the special exception review process still needs to be intact.
Yeah.
Completely, so that we can work through those issues on a case-by-case, right? And I also think that if you brought in the R1Bs, I would want to limit those into a tighter, into that 500 foot, because as soon as you go out further, you're impacting a lot more urban fabric neighborhood potentially. So I tend to look at how a developer is going to see something and want to really maximize, right? And so if I had the opportunity to take 10 parcels, why not? And I want to do the best possible thing that I want to do, right? I don't know if introducing it into further away from the core revitalization area is really what we want. But again, we have to look at the overarching vision of the land use chapter. So that's kind of where I'm coming in. The letter's fine, if that's the simple answer.
It's helpful. Thanks, Sharon.
Oh, wait, one more thing?
Sure, no, I thought,
Oh, I can let you go.
No.
I just wanted to kind of speak a little bit to the affordability aspect,
Yeah.
that I think what that intention has to wrap in some level of affordability, because right now the railroad cottages are not in that affordable living policy kind of threshold,
No.
right?
Yeah.
They're well outside of that, and so if we start introducing more, I would rather incentivize some kind of way to get some affordability into those.
Into it.
Maybe if you had a by right approach that included affordable housing, you know, you have to meet very tight requirements, but
I don't know what it would be. I don't know if by right's the answer. I think, there's tax incentives. I think that there's also incentivizations on, lot usage, maybe different size units. Like, I don't know what it is at this point, because again, the intentions are not clear what we want to be doing with this revision.
I always think though, like there's capital A affordable as in like, subsidized affordable, but then there's also like affordable as in like cheaper than the $2.5 million house, right? So like if your option is, we need more housing at all of those different price points. So yeah, we need more affordable, like actual affordable housing, but we also need more like $700, $800, $1 million housing, because there are people that want to buy at those price points too, and that can be harder to find. Especially like new construction, right? Like this. I mean, that's the need that I see that the T-Zones developments have met. They're $1 million, they're 1.1 million, but it's brand new construction. You're getting, a new build for 1,800 square feet. Like that's hard. That just doesn't exist in the city otherwise. So I don't know. I think about affordability kind of broadly, I guess.
It all comes back to the intention and the overarching vision.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Mr. Duncan.
so thank you. So the staff recommendations that were presented in 2020 are excellent, I think. And had COVID not happened, I'm pretty sure that the council then sitting would have moved forward with them in hopes of replicating the success that we saw at Railroad Cottages, but none of those things happened. COVID happened. There was no replication of Railroad Cottages. There were, as you said, a couple other inquiries, but we quickly learned that, what we had adopted was suited for the unique Railroad Cottages place, but had a hard time applying itself to other locations. And I think the council then in place would have grappled with that and would have come up approving something that very much was like what the staff recommended. Fast forward to where we are today, and just listening to you all right now, I'm not sure that if I were whipping the vote, I would believe that I had a solid majority of the Planning Commission willing to support the staff recommendations. So what does your letter say? And this is a question, not an opinion, does it say, we think the staff recommendations from 2020 are great, and this should be low-hanging fruit, and off we go. Let's get her done. Or do we say, we've been through some wars in the last 5 years over things that we all know about, and the difference, the different climate into which this comes is striking to me. That, the opposition to Railroad Cottages was very localized. There were very passionate people on Ellison Street backing up to that development who literally sold their house and moved away when we approved it. And yet most of the town didn't even know there was a railroad avenue, because who would go over there anyway except you and me riding bikes with our kids. And so we didn't have to grapple with the sort of forces that have arrayed in opposition to T-zones and ADUs And in my opinion, this is my opinion, not a question right now, if we introduced the staff recommendations, we would bring a hailstorm of, oh, you guys are just trying to abolish single-family zoning. I mean, Gene's letter in today's packet says that, essentially. And he's not alone in his opinions, I don't think. So I'm not quite sure if I were writing the letter, thank goodness I don't have to, what I would ask the council to do. But if I were on council, I would hope that, you know, my planning commission would come to me with, well, you know, we've talked about this and applied our best efforts to it, and this is what we think you ought to do. You can do it or not, it's up to you, but here's what we think. You've hired us to look at this, and we've looked at it, and here's what we want you to do, rather than, gee, this is an interesting idea, and really it fits into some bigger things, and we'd like to chew on it for another year or 2 or 3.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go that route. There's nothing wrong with that. It produces a outcome eventually, and maybe a good outcome, but it's not going to be quick. And that's the tricky part about writing the letter, I think. I mean, to some degree, I'd like to force the issue in the middle of the campaign season. It's a great time to talk about things like this because it gets people on the record and hearing, making them think about it, and not like take a stand necessarily, but get them to, you know, offer their opinions so voters can decide, well, I'm more comfortable with this approach here or that approach there. So, you know, steering away from it because it's politically controversial, I'm not necessarily in favor of that, but I do think that if we even begin to talk about it in any way, you know, there will very quickly be an article in a couple of the local outlets that will warn that this is, you just look at the lines, like Sharon said, you know, we have moved from a very minimal cannabis that we were giving developers a chance to work on to something that's, you know, reaches beyond my house on West Street. So if I can get together with 3 under staff recommendation, 3 other, me and 2 other owners, I can tear our 3 houses down and we can have ourselves a little railroad cottage right there on West Street.
Right.
And there's some people who think that would be an excellent idea. It's exactly
Do you
what
realistically think that that would happen?
I could. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, but you've got to buy those 3 properties at market rates. And so would you have enough money to build cottage housing?
it's a legit
That's
question.
not
There-
the debate. If you're putting it into the policy, you have to assume it's going to happen.
You have to want it to happen. I mean, otherwise, why go through the problem of doing all the work? I mean,
I wouldn't. If,
if your question is, you know, would I rather have that or would I rather my 75, 6-year-old house, brick Cape Cod, be torn down and replaced by a $3 million mansion? Absolutely. I am completely in favor of railroad cottages on Southwest Street. 5 or 6 homes on a 3, you know, previously single-family home parcels with access to a major corridor to get the traffic in and out. I would absolutely be for that because, you know, if there's one thing we've built enough of here, it's $2 million houses. And we don't need to encourage the market to do that. Now, you know, I don't know what the railroad cottages style language would bring us now. I'd love to, I mean, if Bob Young were still here, I'd just ask him, you know, what would you do if they gave you the chance to do this? But, you know, the minute that we start talking, the one thing we've really learned in railroad cottages is the minute you start trying to talk to developers about, well, what would be a good way to do this if we wanted to do it? Yeah, oh my gosh, you just get hailstorms of criticism that you're trying to cut a backroom deal, secret bargaining with, you know, you can't even talk about it with your neighbor. So just kind of a minefield, I guess, and I'd love to have us all 7 devote a meeting and pretend like, you know, we're at the end of this meeting, we're going to vote on this and at least do a straw vote and see what
those
we come
initial
down
staff
with.
recommendations, you mean?
Yeah, on the initial staff recommendations, and then write a letter saying, you know, we have revived this, the staff has revived this excellent work that they did. We have reviewed it thoroughly, you know, from a higher altitude level, but we've reviewed it And here's our opinion, you know, we are in favor of a quarter mile, we're in favor of, you know, whatever we are in favor of, or we're not in favor of it. And we're gonna forward this to you now, and council, it's up to you to make a decision on it.
Okay, that's helpful. I guess my worry is like the initial analysis is 5 years, maybe five and a
Yeah.
half, 6 years old, and I just worry that there would be new recommendations that staff might have were they to actually
I think we have to
be
give,
able to like kind of devote the
we have to give them the
manpower looking at it.
opportunity to have those. I mean, there is some fact gathering that would, well, you know, like when we built them, we wanted them to cost about $700,000, maybe high 600s. By the time they actually opened, they were selling for, I think, 900. Yeah, 900. Now, I don't know what the value of them is, but
Just sold.
yeah, it's got to be close to $1 million, which I completely agree with you.
Well, your house is
Is
worth, right?
absolutely, and it's a whole lot better than my house because, you know, my house is ancient.
It's new. Yeah.
And this is new construction. If you can build me $1 million new construction home with 2 bedrooms and 2.5
yard.
baths, I'll take that deal any day.
Yeah.
I think this is a good example of what that next step would look like, where the minute we enter into a more public conversation, some additional ideas, considerations come up. Kind of what I'm hearing is, has staff studied unintended consequences, knowing that there's maybe 2 or 3 realistic sites or areas of the city where these could become more prominent? That's something we would need to take back, reassess, come back with more findings, maybe fine tune the recommendations. But that's kind of the cyclical back and forth of what would still be ahead of us based on this and other feedback we'd have to collect. So I think maybe the further consideration for you all is, does it proceed and get prioritized independently, or as part of the land use update? Is there some synergy there that maybe we should kind of be more holistic and strategic about bringing both forward? So.
Yeah, I worry a little bit that it's like a little cart before the horse, sort of talking about this as like a smaller piece without talking about the broader land use chapter. But I also, you know, agree with Mr. Stevens that a lot of really great work was done, and if we're, you know, 60% of the way there already, like, let's get it over the finish line. But, you know, that's probably easier said than done. So it may be that it is a bunch, but I think it's a discussion that's worthy of us devoting some time and energy towards. So I don't know. Like, your recommendation is no letter unless we are all in agreement that we feel gung-ho about it?
We don't all have to agree. I mean, you know, came to no resolution thereon as an option, or came to a 5-2 straw vote on these key elements that, you know, are underlying the core of the staff recommendation. I mean, I'm not trying to game the outcome, but I do think,
Probably aren't a whole lot of things where it'd be 7-0, right?
yeah, I mean, I do think that the community benefits from seeing its planning commission wrestle with this on its own, rather than as part of, you know, the comprehensive plan or whatever. And that's not a view that everybody shares. I understand that, you know, but I'm in favor of incremental change rather than I've got the genius plan that should cover all of Falls Church for all of time. That's not my idea of what a planning commissioner, you know, could or should or needs to do.
And I just wanted to clarify my comment. I'm not proposing that we stop this until we have a broader plan. I think you can move out incrementally on one initiative or another issue. You just, at some point in time, it all needs to fold
Yeah,
into some
and you're
broader
totally,
vision.
and it will and it should. I mean, you know, the voters should look at it as, wow, interesting things have happened here in Falls Church in the last 5 years. We did this cottage ordinance, and we built this cool community, and we won awards for it. And then we did T-zone development, and then we did accessory dwelling units, and now they're doing, wow, there's real change going on. I mean, for my money, that's good change. I mean, it's a little bit piecemeal, not perfect, therefore, in each of its individual pieces, but as a whole, it, you know, tackles a difficult issue that we need to tackle and is in a broader context just necessarily, because now when we do anything on housing, national voices come in and speak through our local citizens. But And that was not the case when we did railroad cottages. The market for the idea was just not mature enough then to involve the voices that you get now when you try to do anything in land use.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, at first blush, like, I like the ideas of those 4 staff recommendations, so, if we were to take a straw poll today, I would say they sound good, but I appreciate a lot of the exchanges that we have here when we're kind of talking through the details, and the exchanges that we have with staff about, what are those unintended consequences that we should be thinking about. And so my opinion, my knee-jerk opinion on these 4 recommendations could change based on those meatier discussions. So I just don't feel like I'm at a point where I can say, the planning commission is gung-ho, we're definitely going to vote for this if you all send it back to us. I don't know how other people feel, but I would feel a little, but I do think it's a worthy conversation to have. And I think it is a meaty one. It's just, how does it get prioritized, and how does staff time get prioritized, in terms of land use? So I think the letter would be more just sort of flagging for council, hey, we did a lot of work on this 5 years ago. There's interest in the planning commission and thinking about how we can move this forward. Can we think about how this could be prioritized for staff time and planning commission time? So I know that's a little squishy.
Makes
It
sense.
is kind of leaving it up to council, but, they're the ones that were elected to make those kinds of decisions about how the city resources should be deployed. So, I don't know. How are you feeling about
Yeah,
it?
no, I think that makes sense to me.
Yeah, please.
I appreciate the wanting to kind of take the temperature of what the last 5 years has done that could change that intention of those 4 staff recommendations, because I think those recommendations, there was no clear intention stated what they were trying to get to with those. And so I think it's important to kind of take the temperature now and see how those recommendations might change based on what we know now has happened through the pandemic and how we're coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah.
My recollection was the point of those 4 proposals was to make it a little bit easier for cottage housing developments to occur. We've pretty much established that the current rules are probably not going to result in any additional projects. And so what steps can you take that aren't dramatic that would nonetheless make it easier for some additional projects to come forward, for what it's worth?
One thing that is embedded in particularly the accessory dwellings unit process are newer, more aggressive standards for setbacks and heights and so forth. What we did on railroad cottages sort of foreshadowed that, and if you look at the hoops that you have to jump through in order to build a railroad cottages type development, it's like, wow, it's a miracle that anything ever gets built.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a special exception on steroids. And rightly so, because why? Because we're putting new development right in the middle of single-family neighborhoods. And that is a major big deal. And so it should be something that is scrutinized, probably with more, I don't say anything should be expedited or under-scrutinized, but, it's more delicate to do a cottage-type development in a single-family neighborhood than to put up a, building along Broad or Washington, in my opinion.
It is always going to be a delicate conversation, and I think, anxiety will be increased the minute we get further away from the concentration of density along Broad and, some other streets, but I think
that was your experience in Arlington, certainly. As long as we did development along the corridors, things were okay. And as soon as we started opening the door up to development in, mild neighborhood in far northwest, it was like, whoa, that's a problem.
And simply because that type of feedback presents itself doesn't necessarily mean that those arguments are correct or
Sure.
justify historical decisions that led to the existing conditions.
Yeah.
However, we do have at our disposal, I think, creative solutions when I think certain sentiments, once shared on a specific proposal, could lead to further restrictions beyond the many that are already in those standards, such as limiting the number of applications that can come in per year, allowing us to perhaps have a kind of a trial period where, some incentives disappear after the first year, or we are giving ourselves a chance to return after 1 year in case there's any unintended consequences none of our analysis anticipated. So there's a lot of precautionary kind of protocols that I think may put some people at ease, not everybody. There's some people that will never come on board, and that's fine. But I think if there are maybe broader goals that we can achieve, such as more affordable housing, at least that should warrant a careful consideration of trade-offs. Is this worth it, given the other objectives?
So that's an interesting thought. So in that vein, would the staff, would the updated staff report be able, without, going through months of work, to, present some of those lessons learned in recent years and basically say just what you said, so as to give some level of assurance to the public that, we've thought about this and we've put in more guardrails and, we understand the concerns.
Well, without revealing too much, one immediate thought that comes to mind is the way these regulations are written, or approaching kind of a form-based approach, because so much of it is spelled out, capturing the earlier intent of this has to be exactly what we had in mind, right? Very prescriptive. While generally difficult, particularly for the applicant community, what it allows us to do is, with the benefit of that mapping exercise of knowing where the additional sites might be, we can use that prescriptive language to have a much better sense of, well, if those sites came in and, let's say, one additional site consolidated with them because maybe logically from a real estate perspective it makes sense, let's apply that and do a kind of a quick rough sketch of what that would look like, given the setbacks, the density limitations, everything else. And I think that level of preview, if you will, might maybe inform some people of, oh yeah, that's exactly what I was worried about. Or,
Yeah.
okay, I can live with that.
Yeah.
And just kind of see where the community might be on that.
I'd be in favor of that, but I'm not writing the letter or commending the staff, so.
Matt, do you know if there are other examples of this sort of like cottage housing or even like courtyard housing in other jurisdictions locally? Are we the only ones that are doing this?
I think it's a two-part question in that some jurisdictions try to prescribe the senior living or affordable senior living incentives or requirements, and are less focused on the housing typology that associates with it. And I think some others might be more form-driven in terms of kind of the physical expectations you can have given the site context. I think the original language here kind of takes a little bit of both of those.
Yeah.
So we'd probably have to do a deeper dive into local neighbors and see if anybody else has come up with that type of combination.
Yeah.
When I attended the meeting, was it 3 or 4 weeks ago, for the chairs of the other planning
yeah.
commissions, we all kind of went through, oh yeah, we're doing ADUs, we're doing this. But as soon as I said cottage housing, they also tell us more.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's still kind of a unique thing here in this area, at least.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Making shameless use of Mr. AI. The term Vienna Cottage District most likely refers to a recent housing development in Vienna, Virginia, approved on Courthouse Road. It involves 12-unit cottage housing development consisting of duplexes, with each unit having a 2-car garage in the basement. Wow. Oh, my cow.
Well, there's another one called Blueberry Hill that's out on Route 7. That's in,
Homes are designed for downsizing with about 1,200 square feet on the main level and 600 on the second.
That's similar to our cottage houses.
Yeah, well, ours don't have basements. Ours
No,
are,
no
nor garages.
No.
I think that was, as I recall, Letty sending that to me. It was, I mean, that's a kind of housing stock that would sell like hotcakes here if you had it.
Yep. Yeah, definitely demand.
It might just be a nomenclature thing in the way, what we're calling it. But when I typed in cottage housing, I Googled it, it just, the first two things that, entries that popped up were Falls Church cottage housing.
Yeah,
So-
I had to ban it purposely, 'cause
They may be called something else somewhere else, I don't know, but I think we're unique in calling it cottage housing.
yeah, I think you're right. I do, the staff recommendation to drop the age limit, I would support that. If anything, I'd like to find a way to provide, housing options for people at the other end of the spectrum, people under the age of 40 who are trying to become first-time home buyers, because that's a market that is just, extremely thin here. There's just no opportunities really to speak of, except a handful of the condos in Winter Hill, maybe.
Maybe it's a tiny house development, not just
Yeah,
cottage
even
development.
one of those sold last week for $650,000.
Which one?
2-bedroom,
Where?
2-bath, on
Oh, Winter Hill.
Virginia Avenue in Winter Hill. It's nicely done. It'd been completely redone, but it was like, really, wow,
Yeah. That
$650,000.
is not much at that size and that price point. that's for
Right.
sure. Okay. I think it sounds like maybe you and I are gonna take a stab at writing a letter. Maybe
We'll see where it goes.
we'll see where it goes. We'll bring it back to you all next month, and we can vote on, whether to send it.
Whether to go ahead with it, yeah.
Okay. All right, any other thoughts or questions on this topic? Yeah, thank you all. Thank you, staff,
Yeah.
for putting that together. So that takes us to our information items. Any commissioner reports?
Will formally say what I said before we came to the meeting, which was it was a thrill to go to the Virginia chapter of the American Planning Association meeting a couple of weeks ago down in Portsmouth, and joined the staff, of which was well represented in receiving the Red Clay Award for the West Falls development, and to see the presentation that 3 of our staff gave after the award ceremony about our project, and in the context of other winners of some of the more minor awards who made their presentations. It was obviously just an unspeakably huge amount of effort that is amazing when you look back on it. I just came across in my file of photos, the empty lot, which I think was, I don't know, hadn't been that long ago, 2018, 2019, something like that. And to see what that picture showed and to see what's there today is really amazing. And kudos to staff for putting in the application, because that took some time, and kudos to Jack for taking a picture of all of us, even though he should have been in the picture too. Yes, he's not cut out to go to the bars. He was actually, he was taking the pictures.
I have a
Anyway, it was a,
great moment of
and,
celebration.
yeah, and more broadly and briefly speaking, diversity, equity, and inclusion were, very high on the minds of the leadership of the Virginia chapter, and the presentations, all the public engagement discussions emphasized, reaching out to communities that are hard to get to, making them aware of whatever it is they were doing, communities that were doing comp plan work mostly. And it struck me that we're doing, oh my goodness. Thank you. Struck me that we do a lot of that stuff already, but it would be useful, I think, for other commissioners to go. I'd not been to one before, to go to that meeting. I think next year's in Danville, and just, filter out to the sessions and listen to people and share what we've done. It's broadening and uplifting at the same time.
That sounds great. I hope to go next year.
Yes, and housing was, obviously of all the issues the most. And a good bit, Henry Zhang, our staffer, brought up the question about, the site plan situation, I don't know what we call it, and they really didn't they were having a meeting Friday, I don't know how that turned out, to discuss among the leadership of the chapter, but it seemed that most everybody had been taken by some degree of surprise on.
That wasn't top of mind necessarily.
No, not at all, not at all. Henry had to bring it up, and
Yeah.
the answer was like, I don't know, but we're gonna meet about it on Friday, so it really is, you know, something that,
It's not a burning issue.
I think it's perceived now as an important issue, but there's different perspectives, you know, just driving up the old road, coming back. You know, we think housing's a good thing. There's a lot of people down in Virginia that don't think housing is a good thing, you know. More crops, less houses. That's what the billboard said on one of the back roads. They
Interesting.
deeply oppose the sort of development
I
that is
can-
pushing its way out from
I
Fredericksburg,
can understand that.
Charlottesville,
Stafford County. yeah.
Stafford County.
It's an agricultural
so-
area.
It helps you understand the environment in the legislature that led to sort of, wow, we're going to push this through, because there is a lot of resistance in a lot of places to new housing. And there's just a lot of Virginia that doesn't have much in it, you know? I mean, just driving the back roads that have been forgotten since the interstate got put in. Just amazing how you can be 45 minutes away from Metro DC and go for literally 50 miles and there is not even a corner grocery. It's just hard
Yeah.
it's hard to perceive.
Doctor or hospital.
Oh, forget that. You've got to go to Kingdom Come. Anyway, it was a good meeting. You should,
Thank you for attending and
Think about it
representing
more.
the planning commission, accepting the award too.
yeah,
So,
well,
thank you for
I
that.
realized that I guess I was the only person who was on the Economic Development Committee and the Planning Commission now and was on council as it went
Yeah,
through the
when
process.
you were a big part of the whole thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
I hope you celebrated too.
Yeah. Whoopee.
Any other, nope, anybody else? Okay, that brings us to the director's report.
All right, so I'm actually going to go in reverse order so we can prioritize the CIP discussion. So the second item that's on the handout is the Park Avenue Great Streets. This is simply a minor update that we've reached 90% design. If you're really curious, you can kind of assess those drawings that have been posted. I'm sure we'll have additional updates once we get further, but it's really clear sign that we're moving towards implementation and construction. So 90% is always a great milestone that we're so close. But the larger update is really the CIP quarterly report, which kind of continues to track a number of projects. I think we're at or above 50, I think, in total. And really just kind of provide a series of updates in terms of where they are, active, planned, future projects, and help us track with a lot of careful analysis of where they are. Are we running into delays, which often happen due to a number of factors, but also what to expect. And given the pure range of projects and how many we are kind of multitasking at the moment, the city is looking at additional opportunities to kind of highlight to the community what's happening, what to expect, where to reach out for questions, and just to kind of share these more broadly, not just to make them more visible, but also allow the community to kind of help stay informed and know where to go to get some questions answered. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Caitlin Sopsey, who's here with us, and can answer most of your questions, given that you all requested this update at the July meeting. So.
Thank you for joining us, Ms. Sopsey. I thought you weren't going to be able to make it tonight, so I'm really happy to see you in person.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here too. It's been a while. I've never met with you all in this room, so it's nice. It's kind of casual. So yeah, good to be back. The last time I saw you all was probably in March when we had fiscal year 26 CIP budget development. We've provided quarterly updates in February and May to the council. The February update was provided to the Planning Commission with the planning director's report. I did not provide you all a May update, so I apologize, but I'm here now for the August 2025 update. That's just summarized here on the screen, and then you all, hopefully in your packet materials, you have the little snapshot. And as usual, we use the traffic light method of reporting progress. Green is on target, yellow is at risk, and red is behind target. And those are for both schedule and budget. We don't have any projects right now that are experiencing a funding shortfall, a confirmed funding shortfall. Most of the reds on this report, this quarterly report, are for schedule delays. Some of the ongoing reasons that we experience schedule delays for CIP project delivery are right-of-way acquisition and negotiations. Some of those negotiations are dragging on a considerable length of time, which impacts the schedules, of course. And utility coordination, that's another one when we have to coordinate with our utility providers, and we rely on their availability and scheduling to complete construction projects. Couple other things that I listed, and funding shortfalls throughout the life of the project that contribute to some of our sort of what I call legacy projects that are just really old and at this point are kind of permanently red because they're so far behind our targeted schedule. A lot of those, the good news is, are being completed now. The last couple of years that I've come to before the Planning Commission for CIP development, we've talked a lot about unclogging the CIP. We had really ambitious CIP goals and a lot of projects, and we kind of had, a bottleneck for in the sort of project delivery area. A lot of those legacy projects and those older projects are now being delivered. So there's 6 complete projects as of this month. The May update had 4 projects. In all of fiscal year 2025, I reported a total of 14 projects, which is a good number of projects being completed now compared to some previous years, a few years ago where we were doing, 6, like the whole year. So I'm excited to report that we've got some good progress and movement now in CIP project delivery. Some notable completed projects are the Berman Park Playground and also the Berman Park Trail Crossings project was completed a few months prior. Berman Park Playground was substantially completed earlier this month, and those will be having a joint ribbon cutting on August 11th, on Monday, from 6 to 7 p.m. That should be fun. They're going to have music and ice cream and stuff.
That's beautiful.
It looks really good, yeah. And I'll also, this same update, I did not prepare any remarks for tonight, so I'm just going.
no, that's
I'm just
great.
talking. Feel free to interrupt me. But next Monday, the council meeting on the 11th, this will go to the council for the quarterly update. It'll be accompanied by a staff report that will summarize the snapshot as well, and talk about, basically everything I'm summarizing tonight, the completed projects, some of the ongoing recurring project delays that we're having, and sort of what's coming up. Another thing we've been focusing on is more public engagement in the CIP. We did a couple press releases recently for we have a lot of stuff going into construction or already under construction this summer. It's been a very construction-heavy summer, so we've been trying to communicate and inform the public as much as possible about those construction activities, possible disruptions and closures, anything that could be disruptive. We just want to make sure that we get the word out early and often to the community about that, but also celebrating all of the things that we do have ongoing and in construction right now or recently completed. So we have a special edition newsletter, I think that's coming out. The Focus on Falls Church newsletter, I think it's a weekly newsletter. There will be a special edition of that in August as well to report on completed CIP projects, and just trying to showcase some of these projects more. I mean, there's a lot of, obviously, as you all know, a lot of long-term, long-range planning and strategy, and public input and public hearings and thought that goes into these projects. There's also a lot of money and a lot of taxpayer dollars, including grant funds as well. So a lot goes into the development of the CIP, and so we're excited to report and share with the community the success of delivering these projects now. I will be back, and the next quarterly update will be in November. I will also be coming here in November. I think we talked about November 19th, the Planning Commission meeting on November 19th. I'll be here for I should have the next quarterly update to provide then. We'll also talk about kicking off fiscal year 27 CIP development. Hard to believe that that's happening already, but yeah, we'll have the kickoff session in November, and just as a reminder, that's an opportunity for the Planning Commission to provide staff with feedback and input on priorities and what you would like to see in the fiscal year 27 development. Any feedback on fiscal year 26, what worked or didn't work, or, you know, what was a smashing success. And talk about, yeah, what staff has established as priorities for fiscal year 27 through 32. It's a long time out, but yeah, right? Fiscal year 27 to 32, yeah, will be this year's 6-year CIP.
Do we post this online somewhere? Like
Post this?
Yeah.
Yes, it will be posted on the, not on our, I guess, no, not on our website. It'll be posted in the council packet.
It's on our agenda, right?
And it's in your, yeah, so it'll be an agenda, meeting materials, but no, it is not posted on like on a public webpage.
You'd have to know where to go look for
Right.
it.
It
Yeah.
was more of a question of like, we were talking about communicating to, I was curious like what web-based things we're doing or digital things we're doing for
Yeah, so
updates on these things.
the communications department, OCOM, is currently working on website updates. I don't know, I don't have a lot of details about that, so I don't want to misspeak and say what they're, but we're working on kind of an overhaul of the whole website in the near future. Some of that has started already. So as we're doing that, we're meeting with them regularly about the projects page. So there is sort of a landing page right now for, it's not great, and so we've been talking a lot, exactly. It's hard to find project pages, it's hard, yeah. So that's one of the things we've talked about, is providing these updates, and just cleaning up the overall, like, organization and structure of the projects page on our website.
Like, has there been any consideration of the concept of like here's a map of Falls Church and click this thing because here's the thing here, there's a thing here, click it.
Interactive kind of.
We have an
yes.
interactive CIP map. We used to have an interactive CIP map using our GIS database, and it has not been updated in some time. That's also one of the things that we're looking at with the website update, is that we may be looking into a different type of tool for the interactive CIP map. But yes, that is something that we've had in the past, and we're talking about
And
revitalizing that.
The other question I had is like, and this is going to sound Big Brother, and I don't mean it to be that way, but is there a way to communicate to citizens when, like, Berman Park is done? Hey, everybody who lives near Berman Park, here's a really I didn't even know it was under construction.
Yeah.
And I'm here, so like I probably should have known the answer to that.
That
but-
communication's definitely happening as far as when projects are going into construction. Like there are postcards and letters and like all kinds of information and communication that goes out to the immediately affected neighborhood. But I think that's that's what we're trying to work on with the newsletter and trying out the different press releases and using social media to share those press releases and information, to share that information to even a broader audience.
It's like one of those, like, could we buy a very targeted TikTok ad or a Instagram ad that says like a very cheap thing for this, like these 7 streets or something?
I'll take that back to the communications team, yeah. I don't know, I mean, I'm not a big communications or social media person, but those are all the things that we've been meeting and discussing regularly about how to improve. We've talked about looking at, last year we were really focused on making some internal, process improvements and changes to project delivery. Like I said, we had that sort of backlog of CIP projects, and we really had to focus on delivering those projects. Now that we've made a lot of improvements and got some ground on that, we're looking at more like project development. One of the things that I would like to look at with improvements to our project development process, and again, this is getting into sort of more like internal staff, work policy and procedure sort of things that we're working on, developments. But one of those things is a public engagement guideline for capital projects.
Yeah, it seems like you may not want to post greening of Lincoln is this percentage because it's going to cause a lot of people, like, without the full context, there's going to be a lot of conversation, but there's a lot of wins on here that feels like
There
people
are.
should be, like, you've paid taxes and you can complain the taxes are high, but look what you're getting for them.
Precisely, yeah.
I feel like a way to communicate that.
That's
stuff.
what we're focused on. And I think that the public engagement with CIP projects has been hard, and it's been kind of like all over. not all over the place. It's been different for different projects previously because we have projects like Greening of Lincoln, which is a huge multi-million-dollar project that covers a lot of different programs, stormwater, transportation, pedestrian improvements, and then also a large area, project scope-wise. And then you have like smaller project, Cherry Hill Farmhouse renovation. So it's hard we've tried a lot of different things, and it maybe hasn't always been the most consistent or cohesive in the past, but I think working on that, having a consistent plan for that public engagement.
By the way,
is-
what does CN mean?
Construction,
Oh, so in construction, just CN means?
CN, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
That's,
Sorry, I thought it meant something
that's a
else.
phase, that's a abbreviation that we use for phase.
It's the construction phase.
Yeah,
Got it. Okay,
yeah.
thanks.
I had
So-
a
oh,
quick
great.
question, a few quick questions, but you all should, yeah, go ahead, Steve. Jen.
Okay, well, mine had to do with the Aurora House, the solar on the Aurora House. I just had a question on that. First of all, I think there's probably going to be a lot of anxiety on these solar projects because of the
Yeah.
federal tax legislation and clawback of funding and so forth. So, obviously keeping an eye on the schedule on that so that we meet whatever the requirements are. I think if you get started before the end of the year, we should meet the requirements, but, that's going to be important since I think we're still waiting on a study for the suitability of the roof or any structural requirements for the roof.
Yeah, so there's a suggestion that the roof might need to be reinforced to support the solar, so they're still determining that exact requirement right now. But as,
You have to keep a real close eye on the schedule.
exactly.
And then I thought it was really interesting that we've received some kind of a proposal from Dominion on solar. So was there an RFP for that?
I don't know, I would have to look into that and get you an answer.
That would be good to know. I mean, I think it's a good thing, but I was just curious what it is, or if there's any description of what it is that they proposed. I think that would be of interest as well.
Okay, okay.
That's all I had.
Any other questions, thoughts?
Oh, go right.
Just a quick question. Last time you were here, Caitlin, we talked about, you mentioned it, the sort of, the situation with the federal grants and potentially state grants that were dependent on federal funding as a pass-through. And I think your answer was it was all pretty fluid back then. Do you have any more fidelity about any projects that may or may not be in jeopardy as a result of?
I don't, I mean, really the only information I have right now is what Mr. Stevens just mentioned about the tax credit on some of the environmental and energy projects. So like the EV fleet project, I know that we have like sort of a pretty tight turnaround and timeline to purchase those vehicles if we want to get the tax credits. Same thing for the solar. Other than that, no funding programs or grant programs have been impacted so far. So the EV fleet is funded by HUD, a federal grant program called the Community Project Funding through HUD, and that was one of the ones that I was concerned about, like in January or February.
And that's still there?
Still there. Yeah, it's so, and it's been moving along. I mean, slowly. There's been a lot of staff turnover at HUD, and that's been interesting to work through, and interesting to work through their online portal for submitting documentation. But like so far, I've been told by HUD staff that those funds are protected, and that they're not at risk right now. I was also a little bit worried about some federal funding that comes through the state, through VDOT, the Regional Surface Transportation Program, we call it RSTP funds. Those are federal funds. They're outside of, they don't come from a typical, like, sort of block grant, like a lot of our federal funds come from. They come through the state, and then they're determined how much goes to each locality by sort of a formula-based situation, and I was a little bit worried that those were not. So the only thing I can really say, and I wasn't totally prepared to talk about this tonight, but the only thing I can say is I've been working with VDOT programming and funding staff to see, you know, if any of our, because almost all of our federal transportation funding, and most of our federal funding period comes through VDOT, through the state. And other than like that HUD, and there's a couple other outliers. So I've been working really closely with VDOT and following up with them and their programming and their central office staff for the whole state, to figure out if any of those federal funds are at risk. A lot of them are protected once they are obligated to the state per state code. They are, they're considered, once they're obligated to the state, they're considered they're committed, they're expended. They might as well be expended, even if they're not, even if they're in a balance fund in the state's program. So the only one that is excluded from that is the RSTP. So far, I have not heard anything about RSTP changes for any of the future fiscal years that we have programmed in the 6-year CIP right now. So.
Wow, well, that's better news than I expected. Great.
Yeah. It's been a very strange, like, no news, like, very, like, vague news. It's hard to report, like, specifics on, but I think that pretty much captures, yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks. Danny?
It feels really rude to like hit you with random questions from a list of 50 possible topics. But do you know anything about the baseball field? And like, is that really on track? And do we have any idea what the final cost of that is going to be?
I don't know. The school projects are like, usually I'm the least knowledgeable about school projects, so I'm okay with the other 50 topics. But I did get an update. I report October 2025 completion date. Like I feel like that's like a maybe. It is underway right now. Everything, the contacts that I did talk to at the school, like it's fully funded. They added additional funding for the fence or the netting or whatever
It wasn't tall enough, right? Like,
in a budget amendment. When was that? The school board added additional funding.
that's
At the end of their budget and their final budget amendment. So it is fully funded, and as far as I know, the design is going on right now, and,
What people don't seem to be aware of is that baseball season starts in February, and February is, as your work goes, right around the corner.
right,
So,
That's
if-
correct.
If October is gonna slide,
yeah.
we're gonna go through a second year without baseball, which is simply unacceptable. I mean, it's something that council should have been writing closer herd on, something the school board should have paid more attention to. Everybody, and there's plenty of blame to go around for everybody, but, we really need to be up to date on that, like on a meeting by meeting basis.
do we have any idea what the total cost is? Do we know what, like, with the
I
additional
can maybe
funding?
I can get more details on that and provide you with that information. I will say, although October, it may not be October, I did not get the sense at all that it was not going to be done before February and that it was going to impact another season of baseball, so.
And I believe the contractor said it was going to be done last year, no problem, so.
Yeah.
don't-
But I didn't
don't
talk
know
to
if
the
I trust
contractor,
them.
I talked to school staff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. But I can find out.
That would be great to know, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
I have some other stuff, but I don't wanna go ahead of anybody else.
No, I have a few like bigger picture things, but
Okay, well, let's hear about the bigger picture.
well,
I'm way down in the weeds.
they're not that big picture, but I guess you mentioned earlier, Ms. Sapsi, about how like the Greening of Lincoln project is huge, and then you have like the Cherry Hill Farmhouse. I'm just curious, like, how do you mentioned before that like we did 6 projects the year before last, 14 projects this year. So I guess like not all projects are created equal, right? They're all sort of like different. So what is the kind of like actual like throughput that is reasonable for our staff to be able to manage on like an annual basis? Because we're in charge of like, I think like yes, no, like this should be in the CIP or should not, it should be in for these years. Like we think this is reasonable. And so like, I think it's helpful for us to have a sense of how much work the staff can do in a year. I don't know, that might be a hard question to ask.
I think
ask, but
that
just-
it's a good question.
Okay.
I'm probably not the right person to answer it for sure, but I mean, I do want to add, like, part of that when we're completing 6 projects a year and now we're talking about 14. A lot of those smaller projects like Cherry Hill Farmhouse, like we weren't reporting on those. Like we
Yeah.
were doing those even though they
So these are
truly
like
were
6
funded through the CIP, we were not like reporting, we were only reporting on those big mega projects,
Okay,
right?
so that 6 and 14 are all sort of the big mega variety.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. So now I think
Oh,
in
that's a
the,
huge improvement then.
yeah, and in the,
Congratulations on
thank you.
getting there.
Yeah, I think there are, there's a lot of wins. I agree with that and I appreciate that sentiment. I think in the last few years, we've made a lot of changes to sort of like the oversight of the CIP in general, not just the budget development, but also like project delivery and project development and tracking project updates. And those changes have been like, including like new positions that like we did not have on staff previously to really oversee the delivery of the CIP, the implementation of it.
It's working,
And
so
so I
that's
think
great.
that's like, it's a hard question to answer because I think like so much has changed and I think we anticipate it continuing to change. And that's where we're trying to, that's the number I think we're trying to figure out as well,
Yeah,
is like
so
what's
maybe we're aiming
realistic.
for 20 mega projects a year. That would be great. Just pulling. And then my other question was sort of like, I find this report really helpful, like all the context, and I was curious how this stoplight distribution compares to like other recent years. So like the number of reds, yellows, greens. I don't know, just as a share of the total list. Like, are we more behind than we typically are? Are we about as on track as we typically are? Are we further ahead than we typically are? And if you don't have an answer to that, it's okay. If you have like off the top of your head, like, oh yeah, like this is a year where we really ran into a lot of challenges with these different projects.
Beyond the last year or so, it's hard to say because like when we used to call it the CIP snapshot before this iteration of this report, we called it the CIP snapshot. It wasn't entirely quarterly. It was kind of, that was like a tri-quarterly. It was a very fluid reporting schedule. And it used the same sort of stoplight method, but we had a fourth color. We had blue on there.
For complete, right?
For complete, that's
Yeah.
correct. And so that was like, we're talking about 3-4 years ago now. And we did not, like I said, we didn't report on the full scope of the CIP. I feel like we were kind of looking at like what we thought was going to be of interest. And so the number of projects that we were reporting on was a lot lower.
I see. Okay, so the
Yeah,
denominator
so
was
it's hard to make a comparison. Since we've started doing this one, I think we started doing this in July of 2024, maybe even a little bit earlier than that in 2024. I feel like it's been a year and a half, not just a year. But overall, I think for fiscal year '25, our on-target average was, I want to say, like 68%, and this one is, what did I tell you all? This one is on target 54%.
So we are a little further behind than we normally
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. I don't remember what the others were. I don't remember the at-risk and behind-target averages for that, for fiscal year '25. It will be, like I said, there will be a staff report that's going to council on Monday night that will sort of detail more of those, like, we look at it like a trend, a quarterly trend analysis where we compare previous quarters. And so that's always included in the staff report.
Great.
I just didn't get a staff report to you all.
Okay. No worries.
Yeah.
We'll take a look at Monday.
Okay.
So thank
Yeah.
you. I think, Mr. Duncan, you had some more specific.
Thank you for the preview of the preview. Brought up by me. I think I'm mostly to blame for putting you through the extra work. I just, remember how challenging it was on council to get, the big document in November, and I never felt like we had enough time to go through it carefully, and so the planning commission, particularly as the site plan work changes, however that changes, it seems to me like it's particularly important for us to do a good job on helping you all monitor and publicize and, get the word out, because this more than anything we do answers the question is, where are my taxpayer dollars going? Well, we literally can show you where it's going if we're aware. So with that spirit in mind, thanks for coming. Just in terms of how the chart is presented, I remember the blue box, which denoted complete, and I actually like that, and wondered if, the difference between the text of something being completed and the color, it's sort of mushed in with all the other green things. There should be more blues and somewhat fewer greens on this chart if we still use the blue box or the checkered flag or whatever you want to say. But visually, yeah, we crossed the finish line on this. I mean, that's my 2 cents worth on formatting it. Meridian Baseball Field raises a broader question about CIP projects for the schools generally. Another area, if there were, not as much council time to keep track of general government side stuff. There was even less time to keep track of school side stuff. And concession stand is also part of that baseball field, and the enrollment data, which should be coming in by the end of September for the new year, will, I presume, inform, the school board's attitudes about any other projects that the schools might have in mind. I believe they promised that we had enough space for all reasonable needs, and so I wouldn't expect anything, but, I would ask if you keep a close eye on what the enrollment numbers are showing in September, and certainly by the time
December.
we get here in November, December,
Yeah.
that we should have a very firm number. The headline usually says explosive growth, which is not really the case. I mean, over the years, we've finally gotten back to where we were pre-COVID, but, growth has been pretty much as we expected, which has implications for the CIP that are good, because it means that we spent the money that we needed to, and it's going to hold us for a while. Some of the other things that I jotted down, I won't go through all of them, but the sewer flow equalization basin item, is that where the Hillwood, on South Maple, the new building, is that where that lives?
Yes.
Okay, help me out.
Yeah,
The Quinn building, thank you.
Yes.
I'm an antique myself, can't remember it. So that's where that lives, and what is the status of that? Is it on hold? I actually just don't know. I know there's a lot of discussion about whether growth is, causing us to have to spend money on infrastructure that we otherwise wouldn't have had to spend if we hadn't had any growth. I'm not really quite sure where that line of thinking leads us, but
so
what's the status of that right
I
now?
can't speak to the growth conversation.
but
I do know that the status of that is currently on hold. I'm not sure how much of that is public. I know that we are discussing with Fairfax County a different solution
Yeah,
that would not require the construction of the flow equalization basin.
so that's where that's what
That would increase our capacity without the basin.
so that chart in the box reflects, yeah, I do remember hearing.
And there's going to be an update in October to
Okay.
council, I believe, about the
Okay,
status of that.
So there's
yeah.
something going on there that will answer all our questions, just like The Godfather. So that's good. LED street lights, have we really done 240 LED street lights? I haven't been out so much.
We've done more than that. We've done 600.
Are people noticing that we're?
It's the 200 yet to go. That's,
Yeah,
Have we noticed, anybody, where, is it, people not, they're not complaining that they're not complaining. You do notice.
there's a map, and I think you're right. I think they're not on Hillwood. I don't have the map right now of where all of those lights are.
There was,
it's dark on Hillwood.
you guys are still in the dark over there. Good, that's good, that's good. Okay, well, I asked that question because I remember Karen Oliver, always, whatever route she took to walk home from the office when she was on council, all 4 years was always in the dark. And she was always complaining about the streetlights. So I'm sensitive to how the streetlight distribution is coming out. That should be its own sub box, with a map that shows where the lights are.
You all are the purple in design phase.
Broadway Hawk signals are Broad Street. Hawk signals are complete, but it's noted as red, right? Am I seeing that?
So, yeah, so I was gonna make a comment to your point about the about the blue and about,
Yeah.
marking those completed projects differently. So some of the feedback that we've consistently gotten from council the last year has been about this report, being transparent, right? Like, and not being afraid to report red. So as of this quarterly report, new, and it talks about this in the staff report for next week, but as of this report, completed projects, we used to automatically change completed projects to green.
Yeah.
As of this report, we will no longer be doing that. If the life of the project, it was delivered 6 months, a year after it was initially, the target schedule was proposed, then it's red. It's report, it's complete, which is yay, woo, we celebrate that. But overall, as far as the accuracy of the data that we're looking at this trend analysis, like, it doesn't feel like we're really capturing accurate data if a project is red for 2 years and then it's complete and we mark it green, that, on that trend analysis, that I mentioned, that sort of throws off, like, that data. It doesn't really tell us.
Well, those of you who are spreadsheet experts,
Yeah.
I'll have to prevail on that. That runs counter to,
So that's what I also wanted to mention about, like, sort of the ongoing record of behind target and red statistically. Like, that might go up a little bit now that we are reporting the reds differently. If it's, like I said, I feel comfortable saying if it's over a year behind schedule or even 6 months behind schedule at the completion of the project, like, that's a red project.
well, see, I'm always looking at the glass as half full. So when the project's completed, I want to do the ribbon cutting and move on. I don't want to haggle about, we should have been here 2 years ago. Yeah.
I
well,
think if that's the expectation that we set, then, and we make that sort of behavior change of looking at it that way, like.
I would keep track of that. Now, I don't run this railroad, but I would keep track of that by, as you go along, saying, yeah, that one's still in the red.
Yeah.
We're still not, but then the day it finishes, like, hooray, it's dropped the balloons, it finally
Yeah.
got finished. Anyway, which goes to another formatting approach that you use. Mostly you've got months here. Sometimes, though, you have a season, like spring, summer, whatever. I don't think there's a fall. I'm just curious as to what earns a month projected completion and what falls into spring. I want to know when spring is, that I can ask you, are you done? Is spring like March 21st, or is spring, June 19th?
That's a good question.
Okay, well, mull over that and see if you can.
That's information, I think that's based on maybe the project
see if
manager
you can
that
move
gave me
as
that
many-
information,
Exactly,
so.
see if you can, I understand, I've done that myself. I'll get to that this spring.
Yeah.
That's deliberate, but.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think on the glass half full side of that, is I think sometimes we're like, well, it could be May, but we're really anticipating that it might be 2 months earlier than that, so we don't want to say, one or the other, so.
Okay, and the other stuff I'm going to hold to, listen to your report on Monday night to council, except one other thing that I did want to bring up that you mentioned. Some of these are identified as things we would do if we had the money, if we get the money, if we get the money that we didn't get because we applied for some grant. So this is a budget preparation question, what is the role of the planning commission in saying, hey, city council, you know what? We've been talking for years about Project X, and we're getting told that, it can't be afforded. Well, is that really true? I mean, you've got surpluses, you've got resources. If the planning commission thinks this is something that deserves attention, and we don't want to wait until FY 3032 to get federal funds for it or whatever, we should be able to go to the council and say, prioritize this in your budget more than you have so that we can get it done. Is that a fairly frequent occurrence, relatively speaking, that, there are things not getting done because we haven't allocated the resources? Or could you at least call out those in particular? And, here's our top 6 things that we would do if we had X million. Schools do this unashamedly. They will say, you know what, we ought to pay all of our teachers the best in the whole world, and we ought to have the finest buildings, and I'm all for all that. But, on the city side, we have needs too, and we need to prioritize between school and general government sometimes. And yet, we often come to that party without the kind of information that, hey, you might have lost track, but it's been years since we said we were going to do this, and we haven't gotten around to it yet. So I would like for the planning commission to be able to use this as a tool to help us in that discussion.
For sure. I think that's what we'll talk about more in November when we do the fiscal year 27 kickoff. I think the Planning Commission historically has done that in your annual budget, recommendation that we do by city charter. Like that's, the Planning Commission has to recommend the proposed capital improvements program budget.
Yeah.
And there have been priorities that the Planning Commission has outlined in that recommendation. It might have taken a couple years, but I feel like rooftop solar was one of those for the last 2 years. And this year, after it was unfunded in the proposed CIP that came to you all in February or March, and in the adopted budget, it was funded for both the Aurora House and the Community Center in fiscal year 28. So I think, yeah, that's exactly, I think that's up to you all, what those priorities are, what you determine. I think if you're looking for some priorities, maybe, one place I would direct you to is in the fiscal year 26 adopted, the binders from this year in section 2-7, there's something called the 10-year outlook, which is a new thing that we did this year.
What are we talking
It looks like this. It's really boring looking. We're gonna make it nicer this year, but, and that was sort of all the projects that sort of were hanging out in the 10-year window in previous adopted CIPs that were not, didn't have like, detailed project schedules, scopes, and budgets being developed, and they just like stayed in that 10-year window. We put all of those into this one list this year, and we did staff mark some of those as priority. Some of those are based on and sort of supported by adopted city plans from the small area plans or master plans or whatever. And so that's like maybe one place that the planning commission
Okay,
could look and
that's-
see if
I
there are any
remember that
priorities
now.
there. Or if there are priorities that should be added there, that are long-term, things that we don't have any funds for or plan to fund right now that need to be looked at, that need staff time to develop those project scopes. That's what that document should be for. That's the idea behind it. This document, the quarterly update, is really focused primarily on active, ongoing projects. At the end of it, there is the section for project development. That's mostly for fiscal year 26 projects, new projects in fiscal year 26. It's been fiscal year 26 for, 37 days or whatever, so like, that's why those are in project development right now. They're active, they're funded in the capital budget, but we're still developing detailed schedules for some of them. And then after that is there's active projects, project development, and then the pending or upcoming grant application. So sometimes we have grant opportunities that come up in a really weird, awkward point of our budget schedule and budget development process, and it's like we have an opportunity to apply for a grant. It may not have been in a previously adopted CIP, or maybe it was, and we didn't plan on applying for grants, and that's usually where we capture those. Or we have pending grant applications that we did plan on submitting.
That would be like where the Annandale Road multimodal improvements
Correct.
project lives.
Yep, the two MBTA 70% applications that we just submitted, the Annandale Road and then the Haycock Road shared use path. We had a technical assistance grant for Oak Street missing links, Oak Street Elementary like walk zone missing links. So that's sort of like what's coming up next for grants.
Okay, well, we'll let council take a bite at your report, but I would encourage us on the planning commission each to adopt a handful of projects that are your favorites and, every other meeting or so. Let's see if we can get an update on how things are going. Maybe they're going great, and that's a very short conversation, or maybe like the baseball field, it turned out to be a huge train wreck, and maybe we could, have gotten ourselves behind the wheel and helped make that happen more smoothly. One last one, the Bike East West Select Design Consultant, late summer, it's a classic, late summer 2025. So late summer is like what? September 19th or this fall began, but there will be a lot of interest in my neighborhood on that bike trail east-west, in a lot of neighborhoods. So when that person is hired, that's something that people should be made aware of, just so that they know we have a process and we have somebody who's gonna be working on it. So, if that's gonna happen in November as opposed to late summer or early
Right.
fall or whatever, that would be a good example of a date that would be helpful. All right, thank you. I've gone on enough.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I have one more follow-up question, which you may or may not know the answer to. Again, I have a whole list of 50 things to surprise you with. But the Dominion work for the power for the West Falls Church, or the West, what is it called? What's the official name of the new development down at West Falls Church?
West Falls.
West Falls, is that it? All right. At West Falls, at the place my kids make me walk to get ice cream now. When Dominion, is September the targeted timeline to turn on the new traffic lights and decommission the old traffic lights? Do we have, or is that just, we need Dominion to have power and then there will be a communication to people about change in stoplights, and now that there are 4 stoplights instead of 1? type of
That's a good
situation?
question. I'll have to get back to you. It says permanent power installation, so
It may just be the
that makes me
powers
wonder if
there.
it's a temporary power solution out there right now, and they're targeting September for permanent. That's a lot to get done before September,
Okay.
yeah, but I can get back to you and let you know
Yeah,
what.
I think my concern there is the way we communicate the change that's
The
going to happen,
change.
because there are now 3 or 4 new stoplights, and I still don't understand how the stoplight's going to work on Route 7 as you go into Fairfax. But
Okay.
I would love to know more about that.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I had a couple of quick questions just to kind of follow up. I'm really grateful for the stormwater improvements on Hillwood. I cannot say that enough, because literally, I was walking a neighbor child from across home because it was raining so hard, he was terrified. And the streets, as soon as we got off of Hillwood towards the neighborhood in Fairfax, the streets had like 6 inches of water, and I was like, it's not even raining up there. It's great. So, because it was usually pretty bad. So I'm glad that started. But what's interesting is now we've got the sidewalk improvements, which is another great project, because it's putting in some of those missing links. Unfortunately, it wasn't timed with the first stormwater, so they had to rip up a bunch of stuff in the same yard to put the sidewalks in. But I'm also wondering, too, the timing of the Hillwood number 2 and where that's happening, because they're still extending the sidewalks, and you can see they're taking out 1 block and not doing it. And I thought it was just for the grade change, that it was a little bit more complicated. But I'm wondering if maybe they're actually overlapping those projects a little bit more cleanly, so that we're not spending money twice. Like
Yeah.
ripping stuff up and replacing it.
I don't know exactly what the sequencing of that is. We did know that was gonna happen with the sidewalks and Hillwood 1 stormwater project. And some of that had to do with different funding sources and the schedules. But I don't know about the sequencing of Hillwood 2 and whether or not that it would, I haven't heard of any impacts, like similar to what is happening with the sidewalks, where they're having to dig up that one section again, but.
It would be good for like other projects to just look at that sequencing when you're looking at
Yeah.
funding, to say, well, does it make sense, maybe we can see a little bit of savings if we don't have to spend, if we can overlap some of those scopes.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Just a thought.
yeah. No, I think that was something that we anticipated and tried to avoid, and unfortunately could not. Hillwood 2 is another stormwater project, and it's funded through a completely different source. Both the Hillwood Ave sidewalks and Hillwood 1 were funded by mostly ARPA funds, which had like super strict timelines, and they were different types of ARPA funding, different like phases of ARPA funding. So like Hillwood 1 stormwater was like, had to be completely obligated and expended by an earlier date, and yeah. But Hillwood Ave sidewalks is in construction right now. It says October 2025. It's supposed to be, we anticipate completing it earlier than October, hopefully. And Hillwood 2 is, I think, at 90% design this month, I want to say. 90% design in August, and then July 2026 is the final completion for that.
Yeah, it was a nice surprise to see those sidewalks. I saw the fencing up and I was like, oh, I didn't even know that was, it's literally across the street, so nobody was notified along the
Yeah.
way. It was just the property owners that had the fencing go up,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
well, thank you.
Good. I will tell Tony about the stormwater improvements. He'll be very happy to hear that, so.
Ah, that's great news. All right, any other questions for Ms. Sopsey? Well, thank you so much for coming out tonight. It's always,
Thank you, guys.
really enjoy having you, yeah.
I'll be back soon, just around the corner.
In the fall.
In the fall,
In the
in the
fall.
late fall, early winter.
All right.
We used to do quarterly updates to council, but it was like only 3 quarters a year. Like, we never made it for all 4 quarters. Yeah.
We are, this is, I won't say vastly improved, but it is substantially improved from those days. There's just so much
Yeah.
going on.
They were abstract quarters, too.
Quarterly.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye. Jack, I'm assuming we don't have any correspondence, is that correct? This item A.
Correct.
All right, okay, then we are adjourned. I did, yeah, thank you.
So the 17th of September will be our next meeting.
A meeting, it looks like, so. that's-
Mhm.
The SB 974, yeah. So that, the utilities chapter work session?
Yeah, and part of what we're considering throughout the month of August is really, on the first 2 items, just how much of a lengthy conversation we believe we're going to need, particularly given the scope of text changes that are required, particularly for item number 1. And then considering the third item, which is the ULI tap, if that's something we believe we can still squeeze on that
Yeah.
September 17th date, or given that there isn't anything pressing on that topic, can that shift to perhaps October?
Isn't council hearing from you all about ULI? Because Letty said she wanted to invite.
It is on a work
planning-
session.
Yeah, I mean, we're supposed to
scheduled
go
this
to
fall.
the council work session when
We
that's.
are invited.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So maybe that precludes us from having to, you all haven't had to do it twice.
And given the nature of that briefing, it's really more of a kind of a courtesy update rather than anything
I would
formally being
vote for.
recommended in
I
terms
would
of
vote
action.
for
So,
attending the
Council.
council meeting that Monday night and
Yeah.
keeping you all from having to give it twice.
so I think just keeping the agendas reasonably manageable, I think we'll kind of reassess and confirm probably another week or so
Those
what
first 2
September
items
looks like.
sound like plenty to tackle. Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we meet again, if we don't meet until the 17th, there is, help me out here, the program at the Mosaic,
Yes.
the film, which is called something about housing, which is.
Fault Lines?
Fault Lines,
yeah.
thank you. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
and
it's the
you and I.
Oh,
were at
you
that
guys
one.
went, oh,
Yes,
okay.
we went and
I
saw
am
it.
not, yeah.
Is that the date?
Sunday, September 7th or 8th, what,
The 7th.
okay, it's from
That's, yeah. most-
3 to 6 o'clock or something like that at Mosaic, at Angelica,
Yeah,
I
it's an
guess.
interesting documentary.
Anyway, it's an open invitation, I gather. But we are helping put it together, sounds like,
Yeah, we can send that
we,
info out.
we as a city.
Panel discussion, and Letty is part of that.
Great. All right, so we'll see you all September 17th then, sounds like.
It's still late.
Unless something pops up for the 3rd, but
Are you saying we should go on the 8th
no.
and then not do the 17th?
No, it's fine.
No, it's a totally separate thing,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about this.
So we'll see you again in late summer.
Yeah, late summer. That sounds good. All right. We are adjourned, y'all.